Hello, and as I said in part one, all fiscal spending or taxation is dependent on monetary policy. Okay, but the problem is, was the Federal Reserve or its loose monetary policy or its extensive increase of the the monetary supply the reason for the financial crisis? Well, they increased because of the increase of money into the economy. People encourage people to take excessive risks, such as the subprime mortgage debacle, which created a housing boom, a housing bubble. Now, this was started originally under Alan Greenspan and not Ben Bernanke, but Ben Bernanke was on the Federal Reserve Board and supported that motion to continue increasing the money supply. The the problem derived from that is this concept of ninja loans, the so-called no income, no job, and no abode. This basically meant that the banks were providing people with liquidity and credit that can never be paid back. Okay, it was an unsustainable business model, but basically the as this money filtered into the economy, there was little regulation by the Fed. Okay, the regulatory ability of the Fed was in conflict with the fact that it was trading with the banks that were part of that are part of its system. Okay, now Jim Bunny, the senator from Kentucky, said that the only reason for this, right, is the two reasons for this would either be because Ben Bernanke wasn't doing his job as a regulator, or because he had a conspiracy or a collusion with the major banks of Wall Street to fund their expansion through the Federal Reserve System by buying up securities that weren't backed by the government or insurance. Also, the Federal Reserve, for all the loans, the ninja loans and so-called subprime mortgages, and the increase in prices, they didn't protect the consumer from those. Okay, now the consumer is supposed to be protected because the consumer in a capitalist society is supposed to be king. Okay, the shareholders, they have a responsibility because they take a risk in investing into banks, and if those banks or say General Motors go bust, then they're supposed to take that risk on the chin. Yeah. But the problem with that is that the banks might have sunk the whole economy down and brought the whole economy down with them, rather than accept their responsibility for their financial misdeeds. And it is usually the people with all the gold and all the guns who make the rule. That is the golden rule. So was Ben Bernanke responsible for the crisis, and was he responsible in trying to tackle the crisis? Well, yes, he was responsible for the crisis. Was it done intentionally or not? This would have to be investigated. I cannot say. Okay, a lot of this information that I've got is from Bloomberg, from my own research. Check out, for instance, Euronews or the what's the site? Or the Bank of England, or the FSA, or the Federal Reserve's own websites. Okay. Also, you can check out motleyfool.com. That's what I was trying to think of. It's for financial advice. the the response of the Federal Reserve in providing the banks was also, in a sense, I don't want to use this emotively, but a cover for the fact that they accumulated a balance sheet of over $2 trillion worth of bad businesses, basically, and that is another conflict of interest and a moral hazard in that the Fed is turning a profit from the failings of other businesses which it may have helped create because of the increase in the monetary supply, which caused inflation, which is very corrosive to the economy, which then causes a collapse and a deflationary spiral down. But what often people on the internet will comment and say that gold is the answer. A lot of people who, like Ron Paul or Dennis Kucinich, will say to me that gold is the answer. But although gold automatically, as we've seen, is a good hedge against inflation because people buy it and they understand it, and a lot of London families used to keep gold and guns years ago, right, until they were it was sort of made illegal by the Bank of England and the police to hold that sort of stuff. The gold is more a hedge. It's not good to have some form of money which is in itself worth something to keep because it prevents consumption. Okay, people will hoard it rather than invest it. Okay, and then the banking system doesn't work very well because the banks, of course, can't invest your money. But wait, I don't really want the bank to invest my money. I'm just supposed to be holding it. It will be the reaction. Well, our whole system is based on investments and usury. Okay. The problem with gold, though, is just as bad. It's just as bad as central bank because, just like a central bank that wouldn't give any information out, unlike the, which is much more secretive, just like the Bank of England. The Federal Reserve is much less secretive than the Bank of England, in fact, because it has to go before senatorial committees and they prize information out of Bernanke even if he doesn't really want to say it, because there's illogical, conflicting arguments in which the senators can pick out the discrepancy in his answers. Okay, the Bank of England doesn't do that; it just gives a letter. Okay, but if you had gold, it could simply be manipulated by gold speculators who are not accountable at all. So I think the solution to the Fed problem and the problem of fiat money that is just created on the basis of a basket of currencies competing against each other on the market. So fiat money is subject to the market forces in a sense, and also the real rate of inflation, you know, of the retail price index or consumer price index, is to have a much wider basket of goods, which includes core inflation, the things that are left out of the retail price index and the consumer price index, and those are amazingly the subjects of fuel, of housing, of food. The three main most important things are left out. Okay, and so I would include those, and I would include silver, because although silver is plentiful and as a commodity it is also a hedge against inflation, but not quite as good. So it would balance quite as good as gold. So it would balance out the problem. The other problem is the dollar as the reserve currency linked to oil, and that indirectly is funding the Bin Ladens and Saudi royal family, who then pass it on to Al Qaeda. So I will do a video about that, but it will be under a separate series. Okay, see you then.